today we will be looking at a module known as emotion. The main objectives in this lesson are to understand the definition and nature of emotions, characteristics of emotion, components of emotion, classification of emotions, functions of emotions, development of emotions, physiological basis of emotions, under which we will be looking at role of autonomic nervous system in emotions. So, looking at the definition and nature of emotions. The term emotion is derived from a Latin term emovere, which means to stir, to agitate, to move. Therefore, an emotion is referred to as a stirred up state of organism. A preschool boy of 4-year age attending a kindergarten complained to his teacher, telling that he felt hurt since a girl of his age sitting next to him in the class does not speak to him. The teacher was amused at the word hurt used by her pupil. In everyday language, we often speak of how sad, worried, tired, happy we are. Knowingly or unknowingly, we make use of emotional words to express our daily experiences. But we are not quite sure what these emotions are. So, here in this chapter, attempting to describe what emotions are. No doubt emotions are highly complex and subtle phenomena that are not easy to define. So, let us try to understand them by various descriptions. A descriptive definition will be emotion is a complex state of organism involving bodily changes of a widespread character in breathing, pulse, gland secretion, etc. And on the mental side, a state of excitement or perturbation marked by strong feeling and usually an impulse towards a definite form of behavior. If the emotion is intense, there is some disturbance of the intellectual functions, a measure of dissociation. And an emotion is experienced as a feeling that motivates, organizes and guides perception, thought and action. So, let us look at what affect, feeling, mood and emotions mean. Affect is a term that encompasses a broad range of feelings that people can experience. Feelings happen as we begin to integrate the emotion and to think about it. And moods are a state of mind that tends to be less intense than emotion and does not necessarily need a contextual stimulus. And emotions can often have indicative facial expressions and a body language as well. Now, let us look at some of the definitions of emotions. According to Feldman, emotions are feelings that generally have both physiological and cognitive elements that influence behavior. According to Anita Woolfolk, emotions are subjective reactions to experiences that are associated with physiological and behavioral changes. According to Crow and Crow, emotion is an affective experience that accompanies generalized inner adjustment, mental and psychological stirred up states in an individual, and that shows itself in his own behavior. And according to Buck, emotion is motivated state marked by physiological arousal, expressive behavior and mental experience. Now, we look at nature of emotions. Emotion is goal directed. Emotions are followed by some action. Emotions normally involve bodily changes like gestures, heart rate, pulse, etc. Emotions are not inherited and the duration of emotions is short. So, characteristics of emotions. It is perceived that there are 4 characteristics for every hot emotion which are typically intense emotions. The characteristics are: number 1, high instability, 2, great intensity, 3, partial perspective and 4, relative brevity. So, first one, high instability. Emotions are caused by changes that are personally significant. Therefore, change characterizes the very nature of emotions. When people are in the grip of an emotion, they are in a transition in which the preceding context has changed, but no new context has yet been stabilized. Thus, there is the probability of instability, some agitation that are intense, occasional, and of limited duration. Psychologists compare emotional states to a fire. In a fire, there is neither any stable state nor a stable form. It keeps changing every moment. It is precisely that instability one experiences in an emotional state, especially when it is a hot emotion or a typical emotion. We notice instability both in the mental as well as the physiological system. When you are in a fit of anger, you tremble. When you are anxious and nervous, you do not properly sign your name. Next one is great intensity. If you have fallen in love or if you have been infatuated with someone, you will know what is great intensity. Many waters cannot quench your love, neither the floods drown it. By nature, emotions are of intense reaction. Since individuals are confronted with a change, their mental systems are not adapted to the given change, and we know that the change requires the mobilization of many resources. One of the basic evolutionary functions of emotions is that of immediate mobilization of resources for which a great intensity of emotion is required. Emotions usually impel people to action, and thus by nature emotions are given great intensity in order to mobilize all available resources. And the next one is partial perspective. Think of the close friends you have or the people you are in love with. You cannot be in romantic love with a number of people. You may be attracted to a number of people, but romantic love is directed one at a time with great intensity. The number is not unlimited, but rather a small number. Our emotions are focused on one or a few persons. Emotions are partial since our attention is focused on a narrow target, or they express a personal and interested perspective. One cannot be interested in a vast number of people. One may generally be interested in people as a love for humanity, but to be emotional, one has to narrow down one's target of love concretely. And in this sense, emotions are partial. Our psychic energy is limited. And the next one is relative brevity. When a change disturbs a system, the system will not tolerate the change for too long or for a long time. Immediately the system wants to restore its homeostasis. If the changed situation continues to persist, then the system adapts itself to the changed situation, which becomes a normal way of life. After a while, the system construes the change as a normal and stable situation. Since emotions are transient, they are adaptive in nature. When we say that emotions are transient, we do not mean that they cannot last more than few seconds. The typical temporal structure of emotions involves a swift rise time taking less than half a minute in more cases, followed by a relatively slow decline. The typical features of emotions are present for a short while, typically a matter of seconds. The exact duration of emotions is a matter of seconds, not minutes, hours or days. Now we will look into the components of emotions. First one is physiological arousal. Emotions involve brain, nervous system and hormones, so that when you are emotionally aroused, the hormone secretion is more to give us instant energy. Each emotion has a specific characteristic of physiological aspects. Next component is subjective feelings. Emotions also include subjective awareness or feeling that involves elements of pleasure, liking and disliking. Thus, in studying emotion or knowing another person's feelings, we must rely heavily on that person's own self-reports. Next component is cognitive processes. Emotions also involve cognitive processes such as memorial, perceptions, expectations, and interpretations. Our appraisal of an event plays an especially significant role in the meaning it has for us. Another component is behavioral reactions. Emotions also involve behavioral reactions, both expressive and instrumental. Facial expressions such as smiles and frowns, as well as gestures and lowers of voice, all serve to communicate our feelings that may enhance our chances of survival. Now we move on to the classification of emotions. Robert Plutchik developed a theory of emotion called psycho-evolutionary theory of emotion, which helps categorize emotions into primary emotions and the responses to them. He argued that the primary emotions are an evolutionary development and that the response to each such emotion is the one that is likely to deliver the highest level of survival possibility. Emotions are found at all evolutionary levels of species. They are usually applicable to all animals as they are to human beings. Emotions evolve differently in different species and may be expressed differently between those species. And the purpose of emotions, according to him, is an evolutionary survival response enabling the organism to survive when confronted by environmental challenges. While emotions can be displayed and evoked through different mechanisms in different organisms, there are common elements to emotions that can be identified across all emotional animals. And now we look at functions of emotions. First function of emotion is they prepare us for action. Second, they shape our future behavior. And the third one is they help us to interact more effectively with others. Paul Ekman, in the year 2014, he has proposed 7 basic emotions, that is fear, anger, joy, sad, contempt, disgust and surprise. But he changed to 6 basic emotions later, and those are fear, anger, joy, sadness, disgust and surprise. Now we move on to development of emotions. One of the most widely accepted schemes of the development of emotions was proposed by Bridges in the year 1932. According to Catherine Bridges' theory, emotions develop as babies age newborns. They tend to look at only one emotion. At 3 months age, a baby learns to develop excitement, followed by distress and delight at 6 months, and distress differentiates into fear and disgust, and anger at 12 months, moving on to delight differentiating into elation and affection. At 2 years, jealousy develops from distress and joy develops from delight. According to Bridges, newborn infants have no differentiated emotional responses but only have uncoordinated skeletal visceral responses to all emotional stimuli. As the organism develops and matures, various emotions begin to differentiate, with general distress and delight by about 6th month, distress developing into definite anger, distress and fear. Like this, various emotions appear as a child advances in years. By about the age of 5 years, the responses such as envy, anxiety and shame appear. Several studies have been made on child development with reference to emotional characteristics. It has been noticed that different emotional responses are shown at different ages. Sometimes a particular stimulus which produced emotional response at an earlier age produces a distinct emotion at a lower age. These differences in emotional responses at different age levels occur as a result of both maturation and learning. One such study showing these changes was reported by Balls and his colleagues. Observations have been made with deaf-blind human subjects and also with chimpanzees. The role of maturation and role of learning plays a very vital role in the process of development of emotions. Now we move on to the physiological basis of emotions. Most of the physiological change that takes place during emotional arousal results from activation of the sympathetic division of the autonomic nervous system, as it prepares the body for emergency action, increased muscle tension, respiration, trembling of the extremities and a sinking feeling in the stomach, dryness of the throat and mouth, rapid heartbeat and breathing. In normal life, when we experience an intense emotion such as fear or anger, we become aware of many bodily changes. The role of autonomic nervous system in emotion. The autonomic nervous system is responsible for most of the physiological changes that accompany emotional reactions. The autonomic nervous system coordinates their functioning to meet the needs of the whole organism and prepares the body for changes by modulating the activity of the organs. The autonomic nervous system affects all of the organs such as the heart and blood vessels, digestive system and so on. It is a part of the peripheral nervous system that carries information between the brain and all the other organs of the body. Parasympathetic nervous system and sympathetic nervous system in autonomic nervous system has two divisions, where blood is diverted from the stomach and intestines to the brain and skeletal muscles, and in case of a wound, the blood clots tend to block quickly, whereas blood sugar level increases to provide more energy. Perspiration increases while secretion of saliva and mucus decreases, and pupils tend to dilate, respiration becomes more rapid, blood pressure and heart rate tend to increase. Parasympathetic system, which is actually energy conserving system, takes over and returns the organism to its normal state. Either branch of the autonomic nervous system can be activated during an emotion. In the parasympathetic system, the neurotransmitters at the target organ is acetylcholine, but in sympathetic system, the neurotransmitter at the target organ is most always noradrenaline. In both the parasympathetic and sympathetic system, there is relay station called a ganglion between the central nervous system and target organs fibers of both systems, each of which may produce opposite effects. Polygraph autonomic arousal is an inevitable part of an emotion, and that's why polygraph has been induced as a lie detector. Polygraph simultaneously measures several physiological responses known to be the part of autonomic arousal. The measure most frequently are changes in heart rate, blood pressure, respiration and the galvanic skin response, which is a rapid change in the electrical conductivity and the skin that occurs with emotional arousal. The outer adrenal cortex is a part of endocrine system and the inner adrenal medulla is a part of the sympathetic nervous system. The adrenal medulla acts as a ganglion of the sympathetic target organs and it activates all target of the sympathetic system. There are adrenal glands, one on each side of the body just above the kidney, and each adrenal gland has two parts, adrenal cortex and adrenal medulla, both of which participate in emotional responses and which is also a part of sympathetic nervous system. The influence of hormones on emotion has been shown in several kinds of studies. Hormone levels in the blood and urine rise during emotional states, whereas change in emotional responding occurrences when hormones are administered and in diseases affecting the endocrine glands. Steroid hormones such as epinephrine act on many kinds of body tissues, including nerve cells. An amygdala is involved in emotional awareness and expressions through its many connections with higher and lower regions of the brain. Amygdala also produces a reaction of rage and aggression when stimulated. Parts of the limbic system are involved in display of emotional reactions. It consists of amygdala, hippocampus and septum. Septum, which is another part of limbic system, has the opposite effect. It reduces the intensity of emotional reactions when stimulated. The impact of amygdala and septum on emotional reactions is quite immediate and direct in non-humans. In humans, it is more subtle, reflecting the influence of other brain centers. Summary of the module: how do I know what I feel? What is the name that I give to what I feel? Is it just happy, pain, sad, or is there something beyond to it? How do I know if it is just a feeling or an emotion? To find out what it is, we have looked at what emotions are and what kind of role emotions play in one's life. Without emotions, one tends to be static, and emotions are innate and are not genetically determined. The very first emotion a child develops is excitement, followed by disgust and delight. Pleasant and unpleasant emotions evoke a bodily response in an individual. Learning to manage these emotions helps an individual to lead a balanced life.